Hi everyone, welcome to Rocket Rose Art. My name is Jeff and today I'm going to be talking about Dopsticks. Basically why we use them and how we use them. Today I'm going to talk about in a lot more detail about why we use Dopsticks. Why they're a benefit rather than doing things by hand. I'll also talk about the different materials used to make them, how we attach the stones, how we remove the stones, and I'll give you some demonstrations. So, first thing, why do we use Dopsticks? Well, you can just use your fingers. If you don't mind grinding off your fingernails and a little bit of your fingers occasionally. And with fingers it's difficult to manipulate, at least for me it's very difficult to manipulate small stones and to maneuver them around the wheels. So Dopsticks are great for holding the stones. They're not meant to be used only to hold the stones. In other words, you can't put a stone on this and then push madly against a wheel, a diamond wheel, to grind, especially in the rough stage, to grind away the stone to get it roughly into shape. The reason is that because of the amount of force that you would apply, basically you're just going to pop the stones off. So really what they're meant to do is just to support the stone while you use your fingers. So in other words, you'll have a stone on there and you'll hold the stone as you're grinding away to get the shape. The only time you would not be holding the stone is when you're working on the finer wheels to do basically the finer shaping. And you'll see as I work with it, most of the time I'm holding the stone in some way or other and supporting the stone, and this just gives me the ability to do things like orient the stone against the wheel so it's nice and square against the wheel, so I can square up the edges, or that way against the wheel. And only when I'm doing the rounding over of the top of the stone, you'll see me manipulating the stone that way and not holding the stone. But the pressure used to do that is very light. It's not much pressure at all. You rely upon the diamond wheel to do all the work, so it doesn't require much pressure at all. So that's pretty much why we use Dopsticks. It's to basically support the stone, give us the ability to orient the stone against the diamond wheels so that we can grind them, instead of grinding away our fingers. Right, so the next bit is, what do we make them out of? Well, you can make them out of all sorts of things. You can see here, two of these are made out of just timber doweling. The other two are made out of metal. This one here is aluminium rod that I've purchased from the local hardware. And this little metal one here is actually a nail. That's all it is. Why would you use something like a nail when you're doing very small stones? You would probably use a nail. I don't know what size nail this is, but you would probably use a nail, sharpen it up to a point on the end, and then attach your wax to that so you can hold very small stones. I don't do that very often because most of the material I use doesn't get that small, except maybe when I'm doing a pair of stones for stud earrings or something like that. Most of the time I would use the slightly bigger ones, and honestly most of the time I use wood dowel. As if you do get metal dowel, but I would use timber rather than the metal ones. The metal ones are fine, and I do have a lot of metal ones as well, but the timber is easier to work with as long as you don't burn it in your fire when you're trying to put the wax on. But the metal ones do get hot when you try and put the wax on. Not a big problem, but it is something to be aware of. So basically that's about it. You can use them, you can make Dop sticks out of anything that's round. Don't try and do it out of square material. You won't be able to manipulate it properly when you're using it against the wheel. In other words, you won't be able to turn it easily. So it's really just need to be some round material that you can attach the wax to. Next. Okay, the next thing is, what do you use to attach your stone to the dopstick? Well, you can use a number of things. Commonly, I use wax. This is green wax. You'll probably see on a lot of my dopsticks red wax. And the difference is that the green wax is a lower melting point than the red wax, and then up from the red wax there is another one called black wax, which is a higher melting point as well. But for most of what I do, I use either the green or the red. The other thing you can use is good old super glue, which I use occasionally, but not as much as I use the wax. Or you can use some form of epoxy. It's really up to you which one you want to use. I like wax because it's easy to apply and easy to remove the stones. Removing the stones is an issue when you're using glue, because you're going to need some sort of chemical to remove the stones. But wax, all you need to do is put the stone on the dopstick into the freezer for a short while, 20 minutes or something like that, and you'll find that the stones will easily pop off in your hand. So no need for any messy chemicals or anything like that. So what else can I tell you? Oh, double-sided tape. I've actually heard of people using double-sided tape. I've never tried it myself. Let's try it one day to see whether it works, but I doubt it's going to hold as long as is required when you've got to basically grind these things right through to a polish or something like that. But it is another option. I can't think of any other options. My preference is the wax, and that's what I would recommend to you, is just to use wax. Okay, the first thing I want to show you is applying the wax to your dopstick. I actually started it and I thought, I better show you this, just so you get an idea what to do. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. Just soften the wax over the flame. Probably don't put it in the flame because it will catch on fire. So just soften it over the flame and then just apply it to the end of the dopstick. So you get a bit of a blob on there for as much as you think you need. And then I'll show you how to shape it. So the next thing I want to show you is how to shape the wax on the end of the dopstick. This is one that I've done, and I started it before I started the video, but this will still give you a good idea. So if you've just got a blob of wax on the end of your dopstick, it makes it much harder to stick it to your stone because it's just simply more difficult. Now you can shape it with your fingers. You can heat it up and shape it with your fingers, maybe put a bit of water on your fingers and shape it. But I just generally do it on this big piece of metal that you see here, which is a big hunk of copper, which acts as a heat sink, and the glue doesn't stick to it. And it allows me to, in my opinion at least, more easily shape my wax. So I'll just show you that. I've got it heated up here. All I do is I just run that along, and I angle the dopstick down a little bit. I run it along until it forms like a cone on the stick. See, it's got a bit of a hole in the end of it. Then I want to get rid of that. I just tap it on, roll it again while it's still hot, tap it, and keep doing that until I get a nice shape to the wax on the end of the dopstick. You would shape that as wide as needed for the stone. So in other words, if you were doing quite a large stone, you're going to be probably using a thicker dopstick and a lot more wax, and shape that as necessary to fit your stone. And obviously I haven't got it here with me. If you were doing a small stone and using something like that nail, then you would have a much smaller amount of wax and shape it again to fit the stone. So that's pretty much how I prepare the wax on the end of my dopstick. So the next thing I want to show you is how I attach the dopstick to the stone. This is a piece of Jefanite. Now you need to warm the stone up. The wax will not stick to a cold stone. So you need to warm this up. Jefanite will take quite a bit of heat. Some other gemstones are very heat sensitive, so you want to be very careful if you're looking at this and you're going to use proper gemstones. But this will take quite a bit of heat without a problem. So the idea is just heat this up over the flame here, heat up my wax, and then I'll apply it. So just a few passes over here. It doesn't take much to heat it up. Heat up my wax at the same time, just to get it to go shiny. You'll see it go shiny. I don't want it dripping off. So just heat it up and then just apply that to the back of the stone. And I need to push that down and spread the wax out. Heat it up a little bit more just so I can spread the wax out. Now you could dip your fingers in water. If you're worried about burning yourself, I don't bother, just fine. Then the important part is to level your stone up. If you don't level your stone up, you'll find that, especially when you're twirling and things like that and trying to orient it to get a nice shape, it'll be a lot more difficult. The wax stays quite soft for quite a while. So I just basically keep my eye on it, keep rotating it until I'm happy that it's level. And that's about it. Stone on dopstick. Now let's talk about getting your stones off of your dopsticks. This depends a lot on the type of dopstick you've used, whether it's metal or wood, and how you've attached it. Have you attached it with wax or have you attached it with glue? Let's assume you're using a metal dopstick and you've attached it with glue. There's a couple of ways you can get this off. One of the common ways you'll see is that you can use heat. Now, of course, your stone is a little sensitive to heat. You want to protect your stone. So you get, I don't have one on a metal dopstick, so I can't actually do this for you. But basically, you get a rag like this, you wet it, you then wrap it around and hold your stone like that. And then you use one of these little these burners, and you heat the dopstick, and eventually the glue softens and it will separate. Another way is to use something horrible like paint stripper, which is not very nice and you have to be very careful using it, and put the whole thing in the paint stripper, and eventually the glue will soften and you'll be able to remove the stone. And the paint stripper won't hurt the stone generally, and it won't hurt your dopstick. Now, if you've used wax instead on both wood and metal dopsticks, you can simply put them into the freezer. The wax goes brittle and then they pop off real easy. So what you're looking at here are dopsticks that I've just taken out of the freezer, and you can see already some of the stones have come off. But to show you just how easy it is to get these stones off once they are in the freezer for a while, you can just see here, pops straight off. Very easy, no big deal, and makes life a heck of a lot easier. Finally, there is another way of getting your stones off of your dopsticks if you've used wax. You can do something like get a knife like this and over a flame heat it up and slowly chop away at the wax on the back to get it off. I find that very messy. Or you can, without heating the knife, get it in the back here, put a bit of pressure on it and pop it off. I have chipped stones doing that, and I find that when the wax is brittle, it just shatters and often leaves quite a bit of wax on the back of the stone. So it's not my preferred way of doing it, but it is one way you will see people actually do it. So I hope that covers everything. I can't think of anything else at this stage. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments and I will answer. And I would really appreciate it if you can subscribe, share and like and do all of that. It would really help with the channel. And I will see you in the next video. So bye for now.